Chris Slaughter, a member at the church here. I've been coming for quite a while. One of the questions that Matt asked has to do with what God has been doing in my life lately. And I would say a pretty significant area of focus has been responsibilities as a father. A lot of you, if this is going in the Vine, a lot of us have kids, and you have gone through the process of pregnancy, childbirth, all those things. And sometimes at a time you'll take classes, you'll read books, you'll talk to people that you know about what it means to be a parent. But then there comes this moment when you're standing in a hospital and you know you've got just a couple hours before this life is given to you, where you are supposed to be responsible for it, where you're going to take this child home. You have to provide for it, you have to raise it. And if any of you are like me, that was a moment of rather daunting sense of what's to come. You kind of get this thought of, are you sure? Me? Because, the broken bones, that incident with the alligator that we won't put on tape, a number of things that have gone on in your life. Am I really equipped to do what it is that you're asking me to do and to take on this responsibility that's before me? And as you go home, as you start to raise that child, as you make mistakes, as you figure out the right way to do things, what things you should do and shouldn't do, you kind of come into your own and you mature in a way that leaves you better off than you were before. It makes you more of a person. It's made me more of a man than I was before I had children. And it took a while. My daughter's now about 6 years old, and I've now found that God has led me to the realization that I'm not just responsible for safety, I'm not just responsible for providing for my children, I'm also responsible for establishing a foundation of faith in their lives. And when I think back to that hospital room, if I was recognizing something of a daunting task at that point, it's at least moderately terrifying to think about the fact that I'm not just responsible for a life, I'm responsible for a soul. And it's a pretty heavy burden to bear until you recognize that you aren't bearing it on your own. So one of the things in my conversations with God lately has been realizing that there are so many resources in our life, whether through friends or through family or through people at the church or the church itself, where your children are already kind of having this world grow around them, where people have the same values that we do, where people have the same belief systems that we do, and that is a tremendous help. I still remember the first time that Beth and I were sitting down at the dinner table, and she was always really good about teaching Samantha how to do prayers before dinner. So we're sitting there, and Sam was probably about 3 years old, and it was time to do prayer, and she started to sing something different. And I looked over at Beth, and Beth kind of looked over at me, and both of us recognized that neither one of us had taught her that prayer. It was something she learned at school. Same type story with Noah. This was just about 2 months ago. Samantha was singing in choir in the sanctuary one morning, and we went in to listen to her, and he was sitting on my lap, and he was just kind of looking up, looking around at the church. And it's one of those moments where you don't want to interrupt them, but you kind of have to know what's going on in their heads, because he just had this look on his face that was different than the typical shock that he sees when he's looking at something new or something different. So I whispered to him, what are you looking at? What are you thinking about? And he said, hey, Dad, do you know that we're in God's house right now? And I said, well, yeah, I know that. How do you know that? He said, well, Mr. Gary taught me that this is God's house. So that was from going to SLC and their time, their special moments time where they go and sing in the sanctuaries at school. It's always amazing that whatever God's plan is, it's going to come to pass. So even with my own shortcomings and with my own inabilities, from the standpoint of spiritual guidance, there have still been people around my children who have helped establish that faith. And then also going through the process of being asked questions by a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, 6-year-old about God, you find that you have to be pretty sure about your answers. You find that you have to think about those questions as well when you're teaching these kids. Same thing. So not only is God helping you grow their belief system or their structure, their view of the world and of love and of what it means to be children of God, I've also grown personally as a result of it, because I too have had to ask myself the same questions, where you may develop an air of complacency or the routine of this is just kind of how it always is, without really thinking about whether or not that's what it's supposed to be. So I've found both a significant challenge, but at the same time an incredibly rewarding responsibility of being the father of 2 children, of being a spiritual guide for 2 new lives.